for all you Jet fans sitting here and thinking that Zach Wilson is not going to be 100% healthy going into the season. Zach is going to miss at least one game of the regular season. I do believe that. And it'll probably be the Baltimore Ravens. It is fitting to give Joe Flacco the opportunity to knock off his former team, which he won a Super Bowl with. But I do believe Zach Wilson will be back in week number 2. Zach Wilson has a lot to prove this year. The Jets have a lot to prove this year. The moves that Joe Douglas made and Robert Saleh and what he has said at the press conferences and the confidence level of some of these players. We heard Breece Hall and Michael Carter and Elijah Moore. Everybody speaking so highly of this team. If you haven't checked Jets One Drive on YouTube, you have to check it out, ladies and gentlemen, because it really gives you what information you need about the New York Jets and how they feel going into this season in 2022. Zach Wilson has an opportunity to really take control of this team, something that Mark Sanchez couldn't do, Geno Smith couldn't do, Brett Favre couldn't do, Brownie Nagel, O'Brien, Vinny Testaverde did, even Chad Pennington at one point. I think the last person out of control of this team in some way was Mark Sanchez, but that was only for like 2 years. Zach Wilson has a chance to be the franchise quarterback of this team. Zach Wilson has an opportunity to take this team to the next level, something the Jets have not been consistent of being for the last 11 seasons. The Jets have the longest tenure in not making the playoffs in all of the NFL. That should be alarming for every Jet fan. And Zach Wilson is the piece. He is the missing puzzle piece, hopefully, to get this team over the hump where they can be consistently back into the playoffs every single season. And it's not going to be easy because the AFC just got harder. Russell Wilson, that new and improved Las Vegas Raiders, the LA Chargers. We could go up and down some of these rosters. And DeShaun Watson, who will miss 11 games, and we'll get into that in just a few moments. When he gets back, that Cleveland Brown team is loaded. Pittsburgh's defense is loaded with a new quarterback, of course. Baltimore Ravens, the draft that they had, the offseason they had, they're going to be fantastic this year if they could stay healthy. And then there's the Bengals that were in the Super Bowl last year, which upgraded their offensive line, which was their weakness last season. We didn't even get into the AFC East with the Buffalo Bills, the Miami Dolphins, and obviously the New England Patriots. Zach Wilson has a big X on his chest. He needs to show up in games. He needs to play better. He needs to stop forcing balls into seams that don't make sense. Stop throwing the ball to linebackers, letting offensive linemen be the reason why you can't make a play in the open field and cry about it. And everybody says he doesn't cry, but it's hard to believe that he hasn't cried on and off set when he's talking to the press. Zach Wilson has a chance to prove himself. I want to see Zach Wilson go out there and show everybody why the Jets drafted him at number 2, why they gave up on Sam Darnold, why they believe that he is the franchise of this organization for the next 10 to 12 years. Zach Wilson is the key. It don't matter what this defense is going to be. It doesn't matter what Sauce is going to be. It doesn't matter if Breece Hall becomes an all-world running back and Michael Carter Jr. becomes that superstar running back that we expected coming from North Carolina last year, or Garrett Wilson, or Elijah Moore. It all stems from one guy, and that's the quarterback, the guy that runs everything under center. This defense should be good. They didn't look good in the preseason game against the Eagles in the first 2 drives. But on paper, this defense should be as good as any defense in the AFC. The question still lies on 1/3 of this team. You know what that 1/3 is? Zach Wilson.
A huge 1/3 in a quarterback-driven league. You're going to need to get this injury dealt with properly. And so far, it's a good start. It was only a small meniscus tear, which was a good sign for Zach Wilson. He might only miss 1 or maybe 2 games at the most, from what it seems like these reports have been saying. And that's a good thing. Now, you're absolutely right. Zach Wilson is going to have to use this time to learn from his mistakes, grow his game, because what he did in the preseason looked like the beginning of last season when he was making those bad reads, making those first read throws and forcing it into tight coverages, not reading defense as well. well. That'll be a big test for him. And now Joe Flacco back on the roster too, something that did help him in the second half of the season. Learn from Joe Flacco when he was sitting out, when Mike White was playing and stuff like that. And hopefully that could help him grow his game more. But that's a good sign for a guy that relies on his legs a lot, can throw on the run well, and is going to have to take that next step in order to make a difference, because you need to have at least an above average quarterback in this league in order to succeed. You don't necessarily need an elite quarterback all the time, but you need somebody that is competent to lead an offense and spread the ball around. And Zach Wilson needs to be able to take that step with all this talent now around him. And he's going to be able to do that now a little bit healthier than expected, but still having to heal from this injury. So we'll see if he can make that difference.
The question will always and still stand out to be, is Zach Wilson fit to be a New York Jet? Is Zach Wilson the future of this organization? And that's why I say 1/3, because 1/3 is a big piece, a big chunk of a team. Tom Brady was 1/3 of the New England Patriots. That's why the Patriots were who they were all those years. Like it or love it, Tom Brady was the reason. All these quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers. Now, I'm not saying Zach Wilson is anywhere close to the top quarterbacks in this league, but if he is even in the top 10 of the top 10 quarterbacks in the league, well, that tells you they can win. The Jets could win with a top-end defense, with a good running game, and a top 10 quarterback. You can win.
And especially in today's NFL, with a quick trigger that a lot of these teams have. We saw with the Cardinals, with Josh Rosen, right to Kyler Murray. If you have any stretch of bad showing, they might move on from you right away that quickly. Now, some of them have been with veteran upgrades too. We saw the Rams do it with Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford. But nevertheless, if you're an underwhelming quarterback, you're going to be let go of much faster than you ever would have thought you would have been before. And what we'll get into in just a couple minutes is another example of that with the Browns.
And that leaves me to DeShaun Watson. I will say this. DeShaun Watson, I have been sticking up for since day one. And the reason why I stick up for him is because I do believe that some of these stories are completely appalling and fake. But the fact that he took this deal, 11 games, and he's paying the NFL $5.5 million of fees on what he did on and off the field, it shows you that he's guilty. Nobody in their wildest dreams would take an 11-game suspension, practically the whole season. That means he's only going to play 6 games. Practically tells you that the Browns are not even going to make the playoffs this year unless some incredible thing happens and Jacoby Brissett has one of those seasons where he's 7-4. And I don't think that's going to happen. That means this season is a lost season for a Browns team that's paying a quarterback that hasn't played for 3 seasons, counting this year. That, to me, is alarming. And then you have Baker Mayfield over there with the Carolina Panthers. If somehow this team gets into the playoffs with Baker Mayfield and he has one of those unbelievable seasons, do you know how much heartbreak those Brown fans are going to have after they booed this man off the field week in and week out last year because he had a hurt shoulder? And I'm talking about Baker. DeShaun Watson right now is a laughingstock of the NFL. He's a laughingstock. And even with me sticking up for him, and a lot of people has stuck up for DeShaun Watson because there's no hidden proof besides 3 ladies that he did anything wrong. And even with those 3 ladies, there is no proof he did anything wrong because he's not going to criminal court. It's all civil. But this is an embarrassment. The Cleveland Browns, who have been an embarrassment of an organization, sit here and decide to take a quarterback, and a fantastic quarterback. I think one of the elite quarterbacks in his league. Top 4, top 3. I think he's better than Patrick Mahomes. I could say it over and over again. It doesn't really matter. The fact is, he has absolutely shocked everybody for what he was playing for Clemson all those years, winning a national championship, 2 unbelievable games in those national championship games, and then show up to the NFL, do the things that he did with the Texans, which was nothing except put up numbers, and then demand himself out of that team, away from that team, to go to another team where he embarrassed himself.
There's no reason to not want to get out of that team. There's plenty of corruption on the Texans, too, as we know from previous players saying that their ownership has done a lot of racist and bad things in the past, too. Andre Johnson, Arian Foster. So nothing wrong with wanting to get rid of that, get out of that situation. But nevertheless, yeah, there's definitely some kind of guilt that definitely comes from this. 11 games, $5 million in terms of trying to get those other settlements in, because a lot of those settlements, some of them might be telling the truth, some of them are not. But yeah, definitely looking more guilty now. But the worst part of it too is what the Browns are going to have to deal with now, like you were saying, with the roster being kind of wasted this year, because I think it's a brilliant roster that Andrew Berry's put together, probably outside of the quarterback and maybe the receiving depth a little bit. But beyond that, you're looking at a roster that is going to be wasted because a lot of these guys are going to have to get paid next year, and you're not going to be able to keep everybody. So DeShaun Watson's cap hit this year, $9.39 million. And guess what it gets up to the next 4 years? $55 million after that. Pretty much every single year. So good luck trying to keep all these other players that are very
There's
good.
no way they're going to be able to keep Nick Chubb. And that's going to be a huge problem. They're going to be looking for a running back in next year's draft class because Kareem Hunt doesn't want to be there. Nick Chubb's going to want big money. They obviously just brought in Amari Cooper, obviously in a trade.
Right.
You're taking on a big contract there. So I don't know where they're going to have this money to bring back some of these players. And they just paid Ward a huge contract. So my question here is it worth it? Was it worth it bringing in DeShaun Watson? Only the Browns are going to be able to answer that. Now, DeShaun Watson has proven that he can win with a subpar team. He can win. He's had unbelievable numbers with the Texans, and that team was absolutely horrible. So, can he win? Yeah, he can win. But is he going to win a Super Bowl? That's going to be the question. How many playoff wins does DeShaun Watson have? One. In how many years? He's not Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes got lucky. He's on Kansas City. He's got an all-world coach. He's got an all-world team. Maybe not this year, but over the years he has. That's going to be a huge problem. And DeShaun Watson has a lot to prove. He really does.
Because you also have to think, is he going to come back the same way either? Yes, he was a top 5 quarterback 3 years ago in his prime. Absolutely was an elite quarterback. Will he be the same? We've seen players of other positions have trouble getting back after they sit out a year or go through major injuries that were great, and they just fall off very quickly, especially offensive players now too. And the Browns now, having already paid some other star players, are going to have to make sure they can restructure this contract in order to just balance the depth out on this team. DeShaun Watson, if he wants to have any shot at winning with this team, is going to have to maybe, I don't know if there's a limit to restructuring the contract, but maybe take $4 million, $5 million from each season and put it into this season. Just eat the money this year. You know you're probably not going to make the playoffs, barring, like you're saying, a miracle from Jacoby Brissett, and try to make this work, because 11 games is a lot to handle. Now, it's about what I expected. I was thinking 10 games would be the suspension, and they would reduce the fine, which they ended up doing. But still, that's going to be a hefty thing in a very hard AFC.
And then there's Lamar Jackson with this contract dispute. I am very surprised that he doesn't have a contract, but we all know what Baltimore likes to do. The last time they gave a quarterback a lot of money was Joe Flacco, and Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl. So if he wants, and Lamar Jackson wants this big-time contract, he's going to have to go out there this year and take this team to an AFC title game and show that he is the quarterback of the future of this organization, because they could be looking and lurking for a quarterback in next year's draft class where probably fits the offense that they really want to run. They changed that offense really for the last couple of years because it fit Lamar Jackson's game. It's not an NFL-style offense. It never has been. It's really a college offense. So to work in the NFL, you got to be a quarterback that can change the way teams see you to be on the field. Now, I don't know if Lamar Jackson's that type of quarterback. I think he's more of a run-first, throw-second type of quarterback, and that has not worked over the years. Obviously, the game has changed with Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers. We've seen the non-pocket, full-present quarterbacks succeed in the NFL and win Super Bowls. But again, this game is a transitional game, and I don't know if Lamar Jackson can transition into a pocket press quarterback. And that's where I think he needs to transition his game to prove to the Baltimore Ravens when the going gets tough and when they need him to stand in the pocket and make plays, he'll be able to do that.
Yeah, that's why I'm surprised it was actually his decision of making it a week 1 deadline and not the Ravens. I would have thought that would have been more of a team-oriented thing, because he has struggled in the playoffs massively. Even the one game he won, he had that one big touchdown run, but he didn't play great against the Titans when they won that game.
He didn't play well against the Chargers either.
He did not play well against the Chargers. He didn't play well against the Bills last year. Remember, that game was 10-3, and the only touchdown was a defensive touchdown, a pick 6 from Buffalo. So he has a lot to prove. So I'm surprised that was the incentive that he wanted to put on. So maybe it shows he doesn't trust what the Ravens do, and maybe maybe the Ravens, again, they're going to have to get to some kind of compromise, because you're right. They're not known to give out these big contracts, but also is the new wave of the league where you're trying to have to get these quarterbacks this money. And the Ravens, outside of Flacco, I mean, granted, they're a young franchise, have never developed quarterbacks great. They've developed everything else outside of wide receivers very well. So that's an interesting scenario they're going to have. Do they move on and maybe start from scratch and draft a controllable young rookie quarterback? Because they have pretty much everything else on the roster. They could afford to trade up and make a big trade in the draft if they want to. Or do they give them the money and try to make the depth work? But it seems like Lamar Jackson does not trust the front office right now, and that's why he has this ultimatum: week 1 or I'm not getting paid.